On today's show, all offseason, we spend time thinking, what does Jason Kidd, what do Nico Harrison think about this roster? What do they think about this player, about this player, about this player? I think the roster construction tells us exactly what we need to know about Kyrie Irving and Anthony Davis and every player on the roster. I'll tell you, today's Locked On Mavs. Stop it! Let's go! Stop! The number one pick will go to the Dallas Mavericks. Cooper Flagg will fly in Dallas.
All of us, all five.
You are Locked On Mavs, your daily Dallas Mavericks podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
And welcome. You are locked on to the Dallas Mavericks, your team every day. My name is Nick Angstadt, media member covering the Mavs for 10 years. Thanks for being every day. Make it Locked On Mavs your first listen each and every day. This episode is brought to you by Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use the code LOCKEDONNBA at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Today's episode, I want to get into what Nico Harrison and Jason Kidd think about this roster because, like I said, we spend the entire time in the offseason wondering, well, what does Nico Harrison think about Jaden Hardy? What does he think about Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford? Did he sign Daniel Gafford to this contract so he could trade him a little bit later? What does he think about Max Christie and Caleb Martin? And I think the roster construction itself tells us enough about each individual player that I'm going to make a guess. So I'm going to tell you about each individual player, what the roster says about those players. And so we'll get into that. We'll talk all about that. We'll get on into all of it. If you have not filled out the Mavs fan survey yet, it is time to do it. So many people are getting on board. We're almost at 1,000 responders, which is absolutely awesome. We appreciate that. Subscribe to the show, but then also respond to the survey. And it's just for Mavs fans. So even if you're like, well, I don't listen to the show that much, that's fine. If you're a Mavericks fan, if you care about the Mavericks, fill out the survey. It's just 25 questions. It'll ask you about what you think about the Mavericks. We want as many people as possible to answer that so that we can have a pretty good gauge of what Mavericks fans think about this team. Because, man, I was hanging out with some people tonight at a thing called Podcast Movement, and it's all the people in the podcast industry. All they wanted to talk to me about was, what are the Mavericks doing? What is going on with the Mavericks? What's up with Cooper Flagg? What's up with this team? What's going on? That's all anybody wanted to talk with me about. And so I'm going to go through today, and I'm going to go through the whole roster, and I'm going to talk about what the roster construction tells us about each player, because at this point, I'm recording this August 20th. At this point, I don't think the Mavs are going to make any more big moves. We've seen big moves in the past. We saw Donovan Mitchell get traded from the Jazz to the Cavaliers in September. We saw Karl Anthony Towns get traded from the Timberwolves to the Knicks in like October last year, the day before training camp. We saw him get traded really early. Big moves have happened late in the year. I'm not going to put that past Nico Harrison. Anything could possibly happen, right?
Explain yourself. Sorry.
You explain yourself. Anything could happen. But I think this is the roster the Mavericks are going to walk into the season with. And so going through this roster, I think we've learned enough about what the Mavs think about each of these players. And so let's start with this one. We'll go through guards. We'll go through bigs. We'll go through wings. This roster, the way that it's made up, the way that the Mavericks didn't go out and get a Kobe White or go trade assets for another guard or something else, tells me that they think that Kyrie Irving, he'll be back soon, you'll see. He'll be back. He's going to be back soon enough. He's going to be back to full strength soon enough, and that he is going to be the lead guard for this Mavericks team in, like, for the future, the foreseeable future, for the next couple of years. They got D'Angelo Russell. They didn't really have to invest a lot to get D'Angelo Russell. They didn't have to trade a pick. They didn't have to go out and invest a whole bunch of money or assets or anything. I think the Mavericks think that Kyrie Irving's going to come back and be back to full strength. And I think that they're right to think that. I think that they're right to think that he's going to be back, and also think that he is going to not take so much time that it wastes a bunch of time for the Mavericks, because the Mavericks timeline is different now. The Mavericks timeline is no longer the post-Luka trade. Oh my God. All of a sudden, this Mavs team only has like 2 years, 3 years max. They don't have that timeline anymore. They can go 2-3 years down the line, and Cooper Flagg is going to be just getting into his prime or just learning how to win in the NBA at that point. And so you look at Kyrie Irving, you look at that spot specifically. That's the biggest weakness. On the survey that I told you to fill out, we went through and we said, what's the biggest weakness of this team? And I said, besides shot creation, because it's just so obvious that that's the biggest weakness. I wanted to know what people thought was something else. that was their biggest weakness. And Kyrie Irving is the only like real elite high level shot creator on this team. Anthony Davis can do it at a decent level, but he's honestly better as a guy that gets set up and a guy that finishes plays. Kyrie Irving can create for himself. He can go get any kind of bucket he wants. And the fact that the Mavericks went out and got D'Angelo Russell as a stopgap, they didn't really make a big move. They didn't really like panic. They didn't really go out there and test the market really even to try and figure out, all right, who can we get? They were in on a couple of guys here and there. But it's not like they were going to go try to get somebody. Okay, we've got to get somebody that replaces Kyrie Irving basically, or that fills his role until he comes back, because we've got to win right now. The fact that there are no other real playmakers outside of D'Angelo Russell tells me that the Mavericks believe Kyrie Irving is going to come back in a decent enough time, that the timeline that Kyrie is going to come back is fine for them. And that maybe the Kyrie Irving thing tells me that they believe in this other timeline. Right? That they believe that the Cooper Flagg timeline is the timeline that they're on right now. And that's what they should think. Going through guards, D'Angelo Russell, the roster says to me that the Mavericks think D'Angelo Russell can fulfill that playmaking role enough that he can hold down the fort until Kyrie returns. That's a lot of belief in D'Angelo Russell, right? For as much as we're like, man, they didn't go get somebody else. They didn't go get anybody else to replace. They got D'Angelo Russell, and that's all, right? They bring back Dante Exum. They don't sign Spencer Dinwiddie back. They've got Brandon Williams, and that's kind of it as guards. Like you're like, okay, that's what you're going to walk into the season with. That's a lot of belief in D'Angelo Russell, and I believe that he's going to do a lot. I see a lot of comments from people saying you're going to be surprised at how good he is in the pick and roll. I know what he can do. I've watched him. I've watched him play. I've seen what he can do. I've seen him against the Mavericks. I've seen him with the Lakers, with the Timberwolves, with the Nets. Like, I've seen him play. I know what he can do. I'm not so sure about the playoff aspect of his game, but I do know what he can bring to this Mavericks team. And I know that him being the only like real starting level playmaker or even rotation level playmaker, maybe Dante Exum is still there, shows me that the Mavericks believe in him enough and believe in Kyrie enough that it's like, all right, D'Angelo Russell, you hold down the fort and then Kyrie will return. Those two things are happening in the Mavericks' minds. Or they just completely kicked the can down the road and said, we don't really care what happens this year. We've got Cooper Flagg. We're just going to roll with whatever we can get. And then Cooper Flagg's going to eventually take us to the promised land when he becomes ready and we're on his timeline. It's one of those two things. It's either they think it's enough right now or they think Cooper Flagg's timeline is the timeline. Maybe you can hold two thoughts in your head at the same time if you're the Mavericks. Dante Exum. I think the roster says this about Dante Exum. The fact that they brought in Dante Exum tells me that they think that Brandon Williams is not up to the level yet. That he is not rotation player ready, that they can't like depend on him at this point. Because if they thought Brandon Williams, who last year stepped up into a big role, played like 20 games at the end of the season, and was, a real factor for the Mavericks, if they thought that he was ready, I don't think they would have signed Dante Exum. Because you walk into the season with D'Angelo Russell, Brandon Williams, Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, and you're like, all right, okay, I think we can do this here. And then Kyrie Irving will come back at a certain point, and then we'll be good to go. But they bring in Dante Exum, and they brought in Dante Exum as the 16th player. They've got to still make a roster move. They've got to remove Jaden Hardy, Omax, somebody. They've got to move somebody out. One of these players that I'm going to talk about, they're going to have to remove that player in order to make room for Dante Exum. Unless the Exum thing is not, it was just reported. It was reported by Mark Stein. I believe Mark Stein, but maybe it won't even happen. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, well, then they didn't have to do that. But I think if they do bring in Dante Exum, which is the reported thing, it to me tells me that Brandon Williams is not ready yet. The fact that Brandon Williams is still on the roster tells me that they believe in him to a certain extent, but that they don't believe in him completely, that he's ready to take a rotation spot. Yell at me all you want, but I think that's what bringing in Dante Exum says that the Mavericks think about Brandon Williams. For Jaden Hardy, I think that means they either think one of two things. He's expendable because he's going to be the one that's out because of Dante Exum, or they think he's a two guard and then they're just burying him. They're like, all right, well, we've got too many guys anyway. We've got Klay Thompson. We've got Max Christie. We've got Caleb Martin. There's just no shot. We think Flagg's going to play some two for us. There's just no shot you're going to play. And they signed him to that deal last year. And now they're like, well, tough luck, bud. So that's what I think this Mavs roster says about these guards. I think they think Kyrie Irving is going to come back soon enough. Coming up, let's talk about what the Mavs roster says about Anthony Davis, because I think it says one very crucial thing about him. We'll talk about that and more coming up. Locked On Mavs continues. Today's episode of Locked On Mavs brought to you by Monarch Money. I've been using Monarch Money because when you start spending money in 2025 and you start spending like adult money and you try to get the credit card points, like invest in your 401k, have a mortgage, have student loans still, trying to hold all these things at once, high yield savings accounts, checking accounts, credit cards, so many things at once. It's too much to keep track of. But that's where you can use Monarch Money to figure all that out, to keep it all straight, to keep your 401ks, properties, investments, all that stuff in one spot. Monarch Money helps you do that. It does the heavy lifting for you. You can link all your accounts in minutes, see clear data, visuals, get smart categorization of your spending, finally feel in control of your money. I actually felt that when I got on Monarch Money because I said, man, now I finally know where everything is coming in. I can see visuals, graphics of it. It's so helpful. Don't let financial opportunities slip through the cracks. Use Locked On NBA. That's the code at monarchmoney.com in your browser for half off your first year. The code is Locked On NBA, all one word, Locked On NBA for 50% off your first year at Monarch Money. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs, being part of the show, part of the Raccoon Squad. That's what we call our listeners, listening every single day. We appreciate you for checking out the show and listening. We go 5 days a week all through the offseason, man. We don't stop. We don't stop, but neither do you. If you love the Dallas Mavericks, we're here for you. We care about this team. We want to talk about them every day, and we want to hear what you have to say. Fill out the survey. I put a link in the description. We've shared it all over the place. I saw it on Reddit the other day. Thanks to anybody that posted it there. We appreciate you for doing that, and it'll be all over the place. So fill out the survey. Tell us what you think about this Mavericks team, and we want to use that for shows coming up in the future. All right, let's talk about what this roster says about the rest of the Mavericks players. I talked about all the guards. I think the state of this roster, the way that they've constructed it, if it's going to stay the way that it is, which I believe that it will, it says that they believe Anthony Davis, they have full belief in his ability to create and lead in offense and lead an elite defense. They have full belief that Anthony Davis can be the best player on this team. And you know what? They better think that. They better think Anthony Davis is the straw that stirs the drink. Because, man, they made that trade, and you go back, and I just still want to ask.
Explain yourself. Sorry.
But they made that trade. The trade that everybody asks about, the trade that if you are a Mavericks fan anywhere in the world, someone has asked you about that at some point, maybe multiple people. They made that trade, and Nico Harrison keeps coming back to the fact that he believes in Anthony Davis. And darn it, if this roster doesn't tell me that he believes in Anthony Davis, even with Cooper Flagg, they kept the centers. They kept both centers. They believe in both the centers. I'll talk about them in here in a second. But they believe Anthony Davis, he wants to be a 4. He's going to be a 4. He's going to play next to these centers, and they believe he can lead an elite defense and create enough offense to make it work. I think that's what they believe in Anthony Davis. I also think they believe that Anthony Davis won't stay healthy as much as he can because they didn't trade any of his contingency plans. The Mavericks front court without Anthony Davis is really good. Dereck Lively, Daniel Gafford, Cooper Flagg, PJ Washington. There are so many teams that would kill for that starting front court, or even just front court in general. Let me just go through teams real quick. What teams would love? The Miami Heat would love to have that front court. The Wizards, the Raptors, maybe the Sixers. You start going down the teams and you're like, man, these teams would love to have that 4. And I think that's the 4 of the future for the Mavericks. But then Anthony Davis is here right now. He's potentially a top 10 player right now. And I think the Mavs have full belief in him to be the guy that can create, that can be the number 1 on a team. When's the last time Anthony Davis was the number 1 on a team? Like the Pelicans, right? I mean, it hasn't. There's been a couple months here and there for the Lakers. There were very real months where he was the best player on the Lakers. But they just kept waiting for it and kept waiting for it and kept waiting for it and waiting for him to emerge as this guy that was better than LeBron James. And man, it just never happened over the course of a whole season. because he would get injured or LeBron would play really well and Anthony Davis couldn't live up to it and offense would come and go. Here's a chance for him. There's nobody in his way at his level. Kyrie's out because of injury. Cooper Flagg is 18 years old. The next best player is maybe PJ Washington. Anthony Davis, buddy, there is nobody in your way right now. We as the Mavericks have full belief in you that you can lead a team and create enough offense and lead an elite defense to win enough right now. The Mavs didn't trade Daniel Gafford. They obviously kept Dereck Lively. They believe fully, all right, you're going to be a 4. You want to be a 4. We're going to give that to you because we have full belief in you. I think that's what the roster says about Anthony Davis. About the two centers, Dereck Lively and Daniel Gafford. I think keeping both those guys was pretty smart by the Mavericks. I think it was probably the right thing to do because you're on Cooper Flagg's timeline. You're not on the Anthony Davis, Kyrie Irving, gotta win right now timeline. If you gotta win right now, you go get a guard. And we talked about that a lot this offseason, saying they gotta go get a guard, but that'd be short-sighted. You keep the centers, you roll with it, you extend Daniel Gafford, you help Dereck Lively through his recovery and through his rehab and all that. Great, awesome. But keeping both the centers means that they believe that Anthony Davis is a 4. That he's going to be a power forward, that he's going to play next to these two centers. Great. But that's what it says about it. It's hard for me to look at a roster with Lively and Gafford and say, you know what? Anthony Davis is getting like 10 minutes a game as a center. They think he's a center. Like they think their best lineups are going to be with him as a center. I think it's going to be like 4 minutes a game because you can't just keep Lively and Gafford off the floor. They're both too good. They're both too good to be kept off the floor. Like you go through the whole roster and you're like, all right, let's line them up. And like, all right, who are our most important players? Okay. Anthony Davis, number 1. We'll skip Kyrie Irving for a second here because he's injured. Cooper Flagg, PJ Washington, maybe Klay Thompson because of the shooting. Definitely D'Angelo Russell. And then it's Dereck Lively and Gafford. Like they're probably like 4th and 5th most important players on this team. They play the same position and they probably play the same position as your best player. But the fact that they still have them on the roster tells me they think Anthony Davis is a 4. They're going to play a lot of that. They're committing to this double big thing. And I think that's an interesting concept to go through. I would feel a lot better about it if the Mavs guard rotation was better, but that's not the situation the Mavericks are in. They think Russell is enough to keep it going. They've got both the centers, and that's what they think. I think it says a lot about Anthony Davis with keeping those two guys. What the roster says about Dereck Lively, they think he's capable of playing with Anthony Davis and with Cooper Flagg. I didn't expect them ever to remove Lively or to do anything else, but they didn't go and get a contingency plan for him. They didn't go get another center. Like they could have gone and signed another center, I guess, or traded for another center or traded Dereck Lively and said, all right, we're going to sell high on him or sell at a certain point and go move him in, to become a guard or whatever, like replace him with a guard. They think he's part of the future. That one's pretty easy. Gafford is a little more interesting. I think the roster and his extension tells me that they think he's crucial but expendable at the same time because they did sign him to that contract that can be tradable. They got him to the extension and it's like the perfect number that they can still trade him during the season. Usually if you sign a guy to an extension, you can't trade him until a certain point in the season. With Daniel Gafford's contract, you can trade him. And I think that to me tells me enough. They believe in him. They want him to play really well. They want him to play for this team. They want him to play next to Anthony Davis. They believe in him. They believe, all right, we're going to have this strength of our team. And if Lively misses games because of injury, if Anthony Davis misses games because of injury, we've got a really awesome guy that can step in for both those guys. But keeping both those guys on the team and signing Gafford to that extension tells me they think he's crucial but expendable at the same time. That may be an oxymoron, but that's what I think about that. Coming up, what does the roster say about Cooper Flagg, about PJ Washington, about Najee Marshall? We haven't talked a lot about Najee Marshall this summer, and I want to get into that. Talk about that and more. Coming up, Locked On Mavs continues.
I have to apologize that you felt that he should have played more.
All right, Isaac, let's get into what the Mavericks roster says about all these players, because I think that it gives us a clue about what Nico Harrison, Jason Kidd think about these guys. And this section of players are still kind of up in the air. You're like, I don't know what the roster says about some of these guys, but I'm going to make my best guess about them, especially Cooper Flagg. the Mavericks really didn't have a lot of things they could do after they got Cooper Flagg, but they did have free agency. And so I think the D'Angelo Russell, Dante Exum, Brandon Williams, knowing Kyrie Irving's going to be back, the fact that they didn't go get another guard tells me that they actually believe that Cooper Flagg's going to be able to create enough offense. Because right now, they're trusting their offense in D'Angelo Russell, Anthony Davis, and Cooper Flagg. Number three on the Mavericks in terms of you've got to create offense for us is an 18-year-old rookie. And I think that's completely fair. They're going to ask a lot of him, but I think he can handle a lot because I think he's a really good player. And I think what we learned about Cooper Flagg so far has been more about the comments than about the roster. They want to put the ball in his hands. They want to give him a chance. He's going to have a chance to handle the ball. The Mavs are going to rely on him for offense. They're not trying to leverage the future for the present. It's not like they went out and traded any picks. They didn't go out and trade Lively or Christie or do something crazy and go try and get somebody that can help them win now. They believe Cooper Flagg is the future. I do think if you go through the roster, you're like, all right, well, I think that they kept what they have right now. And they think that they obviously are gonna try to build around Cooper Flagg for the future. They didn't leverage anything for that. That was a pretty simple one. They didn't really have a lot of options after the draft, but they did do a few things. And the few things that they did tell me that they believe they want to give Cooper Flagg a chance to handle the ball, to get this opportunity. And then the other thing is, I think they think that he can help them win right now because they are a win now team. Nico has not been shy about the fact that they're a win now team.
Explain yourself. Sorry.
You said it, that they're a win now team.
Dallas is going to get a seat at the table.
He thinks that table is the contenders. And if that's the case, then they think Cooper Flagg is ready to win right now. So the roster says two things about Cooper Flagg: that he can handle the ball and that he can create offense and that he can help winning and elevate winning right now. Not a lot of 18-year-old centers can do that. Think back to Andrew Bynum, even like Kobe's first year, Kevin Garnett's first year. Like we don't have a lot of T-Mac's first year. We don't have a lot of examples of 18-year-olds recently. LeBron's first year, they didn't make the playoffs. He wasn't an all-star. But they believe Cooper Flagg can help with winning right now. With PJ Washington, this was the hardest one for me actually going through this. They haven't signed him to his extension yet. That's coming in about a week or so. If you're listening to this on the 20th, it's the 29th of August is the time when he's able to be signed to an extension. And I think we all expect him to sign an extension, to sign a similar extension to what like Gafford signed, that he could still be traded, but maybe not. Maybe it'll be a little bit more. There's like a certain cap that he's allowed to sign to. And so, I mean, they can't sign him to something ridiculous. The cap number that he's able to sign to, I think is fine. And so to me, I think the rest of the roster tells me that they think he's a crucial piece as a wing and that he can do a lot. Because they could have traded him. They could have gone out and said, all right, he's on an expiring contract. We've got Cooper Flagg. We've got Anthony Davis. We've got these centers. Like the front court is just full. We can't really do a lot with him, but he's a crucial piece. I honestly think he's the Mavs' third best player without Kyrie Irving. Like, I think it's Anthony Davis, Cooper Flagg, and then PJ Washington. Like, which is wild because we talked about him so little. And I read a comment earlier today on the Locked On Mavs YouTube that said, you guys only talk about PJ Washington when it comes to Cooper Flagg. Yeah, they play the same position. And one of them is going to start and one of them's probably not, probably. And then the times we've talked about him, Jason Kidd mentioned that they could play together. I think that they could close together. They're tied together because they're both wings. We've talked about wings, like the dirty work wings. We talked about them forever with the Mavericks. We talked about Dorian Finney-Smith and Reggie Bullock a lot together. Like they were kind of joined together because they were both wings. We talked a lot about PJ Washington and Derek Jones Jr. because they were paired together as wings. And now it's Cooper Flagg and PJ Washington. They're paired together. They're going to play well together. But I think Cooper Flagg steps in and all of a sudden PJ Washington's going to lose some time. And so I think that they're like, I don't know, do we call it like they're symbiotes in the force? I don't know if we think it's like that close of a connection. But one of them, like what one of them does is going to affect the other one. That's what I think about PJ Washington. About Najee Marshall, this was a tough one for me. The Mavs need Najee Marshall this season to score off the bench You think about their bench right now. It's Gafford. If it's D'Angelo Russell, Klay Thompson, Cooper Flagg, Anthony Davis, Dereck Lively. If that's the starting five, then coming off the bench, you've got Daniel Gafford, PJ Washington, Najee Marshall, Max Christie, Caleb Martin, Brandon Williams, Dante Exum. You need Najee Marshall to score off the bench. Gafford's going to get buckets. PJ Washington's going to do his thing here or there. Max Christie's going to do his thing here or there. They need Najee Marshall to go out there and like go get buckets. Because nobody else really gets buckets the way he does. Nobody else creates the rim pressure that Najee Marshall does. This roster tells me that they think he's a contributing bench scorer and that he's valuable. Because they could have also totally traded Najee Marshall this summer for a guard or something like that. But they didn't. And Najee Marshall struggles to shoot the three. That's his biggest weakness right now. That's got to get better if the Mavs want to win at a high level. But that's what I think that they think about Najee Marshall. About Klay Thompson, I think that they think he won't fall off. Because you look at the roster and you're like, all right, he can still contribute at a high level. I think he'll eventually start. But there's not anybody that's coming up for his spot, really, necessarily. And so I think they believe he won't fall off. For Max Christie, I think this roster tells me that they think he has potential because they didn't really like go out and really try to get another guard that could replace his stuff. They didn't try to combine Caleb Martin and Max Christie to go get a better guard. For Caleb Martin, they didn't clear space for him either. So like the same thing, they think Max Christie has potential. They don't think Caleb Martin is like that guy either. They didn't clear Klay Thompson and Max Christie. Like, all right, here's all these minutes because we believe in Caleb Martin. They've got now these three guys. They're going to fight for these minutes. For Omax, I think this roster totally tells me he's expendable. I fully expect him to be the one that gets traded and dumped. For Dwight Powell, I think they think he's a worthy vet, and they're going to keep him around for a while. That's what I think the Mavericks roster tells me about all the players. Thanks for hanging out with us on Locked On Mavs. We appreciate each and every one of you for checking out the show. Thanks so much for listening to Locked On Mavs.
Peace out.